I'd like to thank Dog Bar for having me out tonight. It's Untitled, Ballad of White Women in B-flat. The Chinese came to San Francisco in 1879 to build the American Railroad line. And they were pretty cheap labor, so most people didn't mind the opium as long as they did it with their own kind. But as hard as they tried, it proved difficult to find Chinese women in the Pacific Northwest in 1879 who were looking for a good time. But there were white women, and plenty of them. Now the thought of white women in opium dens was a thought that most men couldn't comprehend, so they made opium against the law. Well, for the Chinese it was, because white women were ordering it from the Sears and Roebuck catalog. They called it heroin. Sold for $1.79. Now that's a better life at a great price. The softer side of Sears. Do as I say, not as I do. What's good for me ain't good enough for you. We don't need no self-control. Long live sex, drugs, and rock and roll. When the Mormons headed down to Mexico, they came back, they had marijuana in tow. For people promoting multiple wives, well, the Mormons are actually kind of uptight. I mean, what's the point in plural wives if you can't do them at the same time? Now, Mormon chicks and immigrants getting high didn't really fly. Well, they could have placed the stress on the 41 kids. It was easier to blame the Mexicans. Summertime in 32, the living was easy, and jazz was jumping from New Orleans to Windy City. Chicks mesmerized by Cab Calloway, almost hypnotized, you might say. That funny reefer man must have been a secret plan to take away our women. And we couldn't have that, because if they went black, they might not ever want to come back. And that propaganda quickly spread, and the New York Times falsely read, marijuana causes a Negro to look at a white man straight in the eye, and reading like a word of advice that makes him look at a white woman twice. Do as I say, not as I do. What's good for me ain't good enough for you. We don't need no self-control. Long live sex, drugs, and rock and roll. George W. Bush spent most of his youth drinking champagne and snorting cocaine instead of fighting in the Vietnam War. And to this day, that's the one thing I respect George Bush for. But he had an opportunity at the end of his presidency to pardon and set free over 1.6 million black men for serving triple the time for smoking a cheaper version of the same shit he had done. Prick, Barack H. Obama. Well, he campaigned on a platform of change, so he readily admitted that he too in his youth once or twice snorted cocaine, and that's pretty cool, but I'm glad he did it before he was president, you know? Because if my finger were on the button, the last thing I'd want to be on is blow. Because you lose your temper easily. You need something a little bit more mellow. Which is why I wrote on a ballot note in the last election that the finger on the button I trust the most is the middle one of Willie Nelson's. Do as I say, not as I do. What's good for me ain't good enough for you. We don't need no self-control. Long live sex, drugs, and rock and roll. In the 60s, parents began to lose track of their sons and their daughters. They lost a lot of boys to war, but that was war. People understand war, but free love in their daughters, man, that was something they just weren't ready for. This next part of history is brought to you by the letters LBJ, CIA, and FBI, because if anybody could make a federal case out of this, it'd be one of these three guys. Now the problem at hand wasn't so bad it couldn't be fixed with further legislation. They didn't meet long, the solution was so loud it began to drown out their conversation. Outside the windows of Washington, D.C. were the youth of America on LSD. And they were singing, Lucy in the sky with diamonds, Lucy in the sky with diamonds, Lucy in the sky with diamonds. both are one big lie. I should know. I stole these chords from John Lennon and that last line from Bob Dylan. It doesn't matter what I take, if I win or lose, I'm not even playing the game. If the times they are changing, why does everything stay the same? The average person addicted to heroin today is still a white woman. No one's asking why or even batting an eye, 'cause at least it ain't